We are into the fourth chapter of the Gotham War, Batman 138, Chip Zdarsky with Jorge Jimenez on art. And things are not getting better by the issue. Let's just put it that way. Turns out Tini Howard likely wanted to write a story about the Catwoman becoming the crime lord of Gotham and being right about everything, even though nothing makes sense. And Chip Zdarsky is wanting to tell a Vandal Savage story. So it gets a little bit confusing in this comic book, not very good. And I don't think it had to be this way, because basically they're taking the entire Bat family, except for Batman and Damian Wayne, and breaking them into pieces around the story to fit the narrative that they want it to fit. Like, it didn't have to happen. You actually didn't have to break the Bat family to make the story make sense. All you had to do was have the Bat family not side with Catwoman and actually decide to distract Batman and protect her criminal enterprise. You could have had them say, something weird is happening with Batman. He's going a little too far. Let's say everything that's happened so far in the story regarding Catwoman actually did happen. She took all the henchmen from around Gotham, started churning them into cat burglars, upping the crime rate, and then she decided to have a parlay with Bruce Wayne and try to convince him that she was doing the right thing and she was actually lowering crime by committing more crimes and stuff like that. And of course, Batman wouldn't agree to that. And then she decided to make it personal by trying to manipulate him, blaming him for the dissolution of their engagement, the marriage that never happened, even though it was clearly Catwoman's fault. She's the one that left him at the altar. But she blames it on Bruce Wayne. It turns out he hadn't actually confronted his own feelings about the event, goes a little too far, puts one of her henchmen in the hospital in a full body cast. And next thing you know, Nightwing's like, he almost killed that guy, or he almost killed that girl. That was a little bit too far. And then they're trying to get Bruce to step back, but he can't. And then Damian Wayne sides with Bruce. He's like, yeah, we should have been killing criminals all along. He was always holding back and he never should have. And now you have a fight between Bruce Wayne, Catwoman, and the Bat family that actually kind of makes sense. It would actually make sense for all the characters involved from that perspective, and you wouldn't have to break anything to make the story actually work. But you can't do that, because then you would have to admit that the Catwoman is doing something wrong by training people to commit more crimes, and being the crime boss of Gotham actually isn't making her the savior that Tini Howard likely believes she is, and perhaps maybe even Chip Zdarsky is bought into. I don't know why. Like I said, this issue, things don't get a whole lot better. Let's talk about it. We won't talk about the art, because admittedly, the Jorge Jimenez art is the best thing about the entire issue and almost distracts you from how bad the story is, but not quite fully, because I think you're supposed to be invested in some of these beats. We start out and Batman has done the unthinkable. He's reprogrammed Jason Todd. Apparently he kidnapped him in that one shot from last week. He wakes up in a hospital. He feels weird. There's something wrong with him. And it turns out Batman has a machine that he used to reprogram Jason Todd's mind to the point where anytime he's going to do something dangerous, he gets overcome by fear. He has a panic attack and is basically incapable of doing anything dangerous, let alone hurting somebody. And yes, Jason Todd's killed a lot of people, and I can almost understand where Batman's coming from. It doesn't feel morally correct, but technically he is saving people, so I don't completely object to what Batman did here. But the idea that Batman has a machine that when he captures somebody, I don't know if he sedates them or whatever, he can reprogram their mind to not commit crimes or kill people anymore. Maybe we should have tried this machine out on Joker so he'd stop murdering everybody. Maybe we should have tried this machine out on the Scarecrow so he'd stop scaring everybody and giving them nightmares. Maybe we try it out on Dr. Freeze, and anytime he wants to freeze something, he has a panic attack. Therefore, he can't actually freeze the city anymore. Once you introduce something like this, a concept like this that apparently Batman's had access to for a very long time, and you're just like, why wouldn't he have used this on the greatest criminal threats to Gotham, and not only to Gotham, but the DC universe? Why hasn't he used this machine to fix Lex Luthor if he can do that? So that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but he's negated Jason Todd by reprogramming his mind. I imagine nobody's going to like that when it turns out Catwoman and her henchmen and Marquis are looking for Jason Todd. He's missing, but it's not just them, because they're in cahoots with the entire Bat family. You know, Nightwing is working for Catwoman now. Oracle is working for Catwoman. Jason Todd was working for Catwoman. Tim Drake is working for Catwoman. They're all fighting for the criminals in this issue. And Nightwing knows another secret lair for Bruce Wayne. It's where his parents lived. I guess when his dad was going to medical school, he ended up buying this apartment and turning it into like the location of the Bat Box. Something I haven't heard of in a long time, and to be honest, I completely forgot about it. If Jim didn't put in a little excerpt in a comic book review that Gabe Hernandez did on this, I wouldn't have even remembered the bat boxes, but reading up on what he had to say, it doesn't actually make sense for this. But before we get to the bat boxes and the betrayal of Bruce Wayne by Dick Grayson, Damian Wayne, the only character in this story that makes a goddamn bit of sense, shows up to actually stop his true father figure, Dick Grayson. They decide they're going to fight it out, and Nightwing realizes he can't take little Damian Wayne on his own, so he calls for backup, and then Tim Drake shows up. And to be completely honest, despite being an enormous Dick Grayson fan, I was pretty happy that Damian Wayne got a little slice on his cheek, drew a little blood on that asshole before Tim Drake actually just swings him to another building so Dick Grayson can continue betraying Batman and Bruce Wayne. And apparently this bat box is the key to everything. In his mind, I guess if he disables the bat box, which allows Bruce Wayne to be connected to everything that's part of the Bat family, I guess, is the way I kind of understand it, this will somehow stop Batman. I do not believe that that is the case. I do not think if you turn off his walkie-talkies and cell phones that Batman will just be completely incapacitated. He is the world's greatest detective. He's one of the greatest hand-to-hand fighters in the world. It feels like he would be pretty damn capable with or without the bat box. But that's the big thing that we're supposed to believe. Whatever, Chip Zdarsky, if that's what you want me to believe. And Chip realizes that this story absolutely sucks balls. And basically nobody is going to back what Dick Grayson is doing here when he betrays Batman. So he goes back and they remember the vow when he was a kid, when he decided to be Robin. And he breaks down the first 3 barriers to the bat box or whatever so he can disable everything and find out what happened to Jason Todd. And of course, Batman shows up and they start fighting and they're going at it toe to toe. And Batman, I guess I'm supposed to feel like he's going too far, like he's being too ruthless, but technically he's fighting a criminal organization run by Catwoman that has an entire team of superheroes at their disposal. Is he supposed to take it down a notch? There are 7 people on this team that are fighting for Catwoman against Batman that have a legitimate chance of beating him in combat or killing him. Yet somehow I'm supposed to believe the Batman and Zur-En-Arrh has driven Bruce Wayne too far. It's like, whatever. It's just absolutely so stupid. And we do get this enormous confrontation between Batman and Nightwing and Red Robin. Damian Wayne, by this point, has actually been foiled. He and Tim Drake are fighting one-on-one. Tim Drake doesn't have to do anything to actually defeat Damian Wayne. He can't beat him in one-on-one combat. But we never even get to see what makes Tim Drake special, why he would have a fighting chance against Damian Wayne, because he just uses his pole and electrocutes him. I'm supposed to believe that Damian Wayne didn't see that one coming or jump out of the way or something. It didn't even feel earned. And then you have this big fight between the two because finally the bat box is broken and he finds out that Red Hood has been reprogrammed. I don't know why that was in the bat box or why disabling the bat box would allow him to have access to that information. But it did, and they decide they're going to fight, and they're going at it, and at one point, Bruce Wayne breaks one of Nightwing's Escrima sticks, and it appears that Tim Drake and Nightwing have kind of defeated him. But in a moment of weakness, he ends up catching them in a net or something like that. And the police are coming, oh, they're all going to get caught. But then he throws a batarang down to them, so they cut themselves loose. And all of this is supposed to mean something. All of this is supposed to be emotional, oh my goodness, Batman has lost his mind to such a degree that the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh is taking over and he's willing to beat up his children. And all I can think of is there's literally a team fighting against him, 7-1 of paramilitary operators that he personally trained, that he knows how dangerous they are, and he can't hold back if he actually wants to save the city from all the crime and craziness that's going on at the time. And then we get this really contrived moment to where now we're supposed to believe that because he's so far gone, he's given up on Damian Wayne. He just left him out there by himself because Batman's on a rooftop and he's watching what happens and he frees Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, but he never freed Damian. Now, listen, Damian was literally raised by assassins. Why wouldn't Bruce Wayne believe Damian Wayne was capable of releasing himself from his shackles? That's a completely smart assumption. If I'm the world's greatest detective, I assume that's happening. And even if it doesn't happen, and he is taken into police custody, I imagine he's going to be able to break himself out and get back into the fight. Or if he's taken into custody by Nightwing and Red Robin, that he's likely going to be able to escape himself. But I'm supposed to believe all of a sudden Damian's oh, my dad and I, we're best friends now. And I can't believe he left me here with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake. And it's supposed to be this big moment. And you're well, Chip, you broke all the characters in the lead up to this and you're not giving Damian Wayne any credit. And yes, there are some exciting action scenes. This thing is actually kind of wall-to-wall action from Jorge Jimenez. But this doesn't do anything. It doesn't move me a fucking inch. None of this moved me an inch. Not even the moment where Dick Grayson's thinking about when he was a kid and he took his vow to be the Robin and fight crime with Batman. None of this hits me in my feel spots. I'm not tingling anywhere. And all I feel by the end is like complete and utter disappointment. And that's basically what Gotham War is. One enormous story full of disappointment. And then we get the big reveal. And it turns out this story really isn't about Catwoman training all the henchmen in the city, claiming that she solved crime by committing more crimes. It's actually Vandal Savage is looking to make an immortal army. He needs to pick up the pieces of these stones that apparently are concentrated in Gotham, whatever. And then it turns out Marquis is not Marquis, is actually his daughter, Scandal Savage. And I believe I probably should have figured this out before the scene because they have basically shown the same person with two different names before. But at no point during this comic book story have I given a fuck about Marquis or Scandal Savage. It turns out they're the same person. And she's going to free Jason Todd. And he's like, I'm too scared to fight. You know, I can't do it. And she's like, well, we need warriors. We're going to leave you behind as we make our own undead army, immortal army or whatever. She offered to make him immortal, but he didn't pass the test because he was too much of a scaredy cat. And it turns out Vandal Savage and Scandal Savage are playing Catwoman and this enormous team of cat burglars that she's been trained to become murderers because they haven't been training like to steal diamonds. They've been training to kill people. They've actually been training their new army that are going to try and make an immortal army to take over Gotham or something like this. This is the most fucking random happenstance like story I've ever read in my life. It almost felt like I was watching Syriana again, where you're just like, I don't even know what the fuck is going on here. I don't even know what Chip Zdarsky and Tini Howard are like fucking getting at. So it was a swerve that this was a Batman versus Catwoman story. It's really them fighting Vandal Savage and Scandal Savage. It turns out Chip wanted to write a Vandal Savage story, but he didn't want to give up on old Tini Howard, and she wanted to write a Catwoman is the Queen of Gotham story. And he decided, yes, I will destroy my reputation and any chance I ever have of getting on another premier character again by letting you tag along with me and ruining my story. That's what's going on. I don't know, man. Maybe you liked it. Maybe you like Wes, you are crazy, man. This is exactly what the Bat family is. Man, you and I have very different understandings of the Bat family, very different understandings of Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, Batman, Oracle. We don't see Orphan or Signal or any of those characters in here, spoiler, but I don't believe they would have sided with the actual villain in the book either. And that's where everything just falls apart. And like I said, they're just breaking the characters around the story because the story is more important than actually telling a good Batman story. Chip Zdarsky and Tini Howard's hubris is more important than the long-term success and viability of the DC universe in comic books. That's the only way I can come away from this. So another disappointing chapter in the Gotham War. I'm not very surprised. Definitely want to hear from you guys. Did you read this thing? And if you did you remove Batman from your pull list? Because that would have been the smartest move at this point. Just what a god-awful story and absolutely blows. And I'm done with Batman as R&R, and once this stupid Gotham War thing is over, I'm just done with Batman until Chip Zdarsky leaves the book, or until I'm told for like at least 6 months straight, it's fucking good. But at this point, with everything I've observed, I don't think Chip Zdarsky has that in him anymore. Unfortunately, he might have wasted all of his good stories on Daredevil instead of the premier superhero in the entire American comic book market. But, you know, this is bad for DC. It's bad for everybody. And it's bad for me because this book sucked. If this is your first time hearing about Gotham War or my thoughts on it, I did review the very first issue that Tini Howard and Chip Zdarsky wrote, and somehow it might have been worse. Definitely check this one out here because it was awful. There's also a link in the video description.